Chapter 5 Beware Water. From the speeding gyrocar, Lucky caught glimpses of the mighty dome overhead. A city built underwater, he reflected, requires engineering miracles to be practical. There were domed cities in many places in the solar system. The oldest and most famous were on Mars. But on Mars, gravity was only 2/5 Earth normal, and pressing down on the Martian domes was only a rarefied, wispy atmosphere. Here on Venus, gravity was 5/6 Earth normal, and the Venusian domes were topped with water. Even though the domes were built in shallow seas so that their tops nearly broke surface at low tide, it was still a matter of supporting millions of tons of water. Lucky, like most Earthmen, and Venusians too for that matter, tended to take such achievements of mankind for granted. But now, with Lou Evans returned to confinement and the problem involving him momentarily dismissed, Lucky's agile mind was putting thoughts together and craving knowledge on this new matter. He said, "How is the dome supported, Dr. Morris?" The fat Venusian had recovered some of his composure. The gyrocar he was driving hurtled toward the threatened sector. His words were still tight and grim. He said, "Diamagnetic force fields and steel housing. It looks as though steel beams are supporting the dome, but that's not so. Steel just isn't strong enough." It's the force fields that do it." Lucky looked down at the city streets below, filled with people and life. He said, "Have there ever been any accidents of this type before?" Morris groaned. "Great space. Not like this. We'll be there in 5 minutes." "Are there any precautions taken against accidents?" Lucky went on stolidly. "Of course there are. We have a system of alarms and automatic field adjusters that are as foolproof as we can manage, and the whole city is built in segments. Any local failure in the dome brings down sections of transite backed by subsidiary fields." "Then the city won't be destroyed even if the ocean is let in, is that right? And this is well known to the populations?" "Certainly. The people know they're protected, but still, man, a good part of the city will be ruined. There's bound to be some loss of life, and property damage will be terrific. Worse still, if men can be controlled into doing this once, they can be controlled into doing it again." Bigman, the third man in the gyrocar, stared anxiously at Lucky. The tall Earthman was abstracted, and his brows were knit into a hard frown. Then Morris grunted, "Here we are." The car decelerated rapidly into a jarring halt. Bigman's watch said 2:15, but that meant nothing. Venus's nights were 18 hours long, and here under the dome there was neither day nor night. Artificial lights blossomed now as they always did. Buildings loomed clearly as always. If the city seemed different in any way, it was in the actions of its inhabitants. They were swirling out of the various sections of the city. News of the crisis had spread by the mysterious magic of word of mouth, and they were flocking to see the sight, morbidly curious, as the going to a show or a circus parade, or as men on Earth would flock for seats as the magnetonic concert. Police held back the rumbling crowds and beat out a path for Morris and the two with him. Already a thick partition of cloudy transite had moved down, blocking off the section of the city that was threatened by deluge. Morris shepherded Lucky and Bigman through a large door. The noise of the crowd muffled and faded behind them. Inside the building a man stepped hastily towards Morris. "Dr. Morris!" he began. Morris looked up and snapped out hasty introductions. "Lyman Turner, Chief Engineer, David Starr of the Council, Bigman Jones." Then, at some signal from another part of the room, he dashed off, his heavy body making surprising speed. He called out over his shoulder as he started, "Turner will take care of you two." Turner yelled, "Just a minute, Dr. Morris!" But the yell went unheard. Lucky gestured to Bigman, and the little Martian raced after the Venusian councilman. "Is he going to bring Dr. Morris back?" asked Turner worriedly, stroking a rectangular box he carried suspended from a strap over one shoulder. He had a gaunt face and red-brown hair, a prominently hooked nose, a scattering of freckles, and a wide mouth. There was trouble in his face. "No," said Lucky. Morris may be needed out there. I just gave my friend the high sign to stick closely to him." "I don't know what good that will do," muttered the engineer. "I don't know what good anything will do." He put a cigarette to his mouth and absently held one out to Lucky. Lucky's refusal went unnoticed for a few moments. Then Turner stood there, holding the plastic container of smokes at arm's length, lost in a thoughtful world of his own. Lucky said, "They're evacuating the threatened sector, I suppose." Turner took back his cigarettes with a start, then puffed strongly at the one between his lips. He dropped it, then pressed it out with the sole of his shoe. "They are," he said, "but I don't know," and his voice faded out. Lucky said, "The partition is safely across the city, isn't it?" "Yes, yes," muttered the engineer. Lucky waited a moment, and said, "But you're not satisfied. What was it you were trying to tell Dr. Morris?" The engineer looked hastily at Lucky, hitched at the black box he carried, and said, "Nothing, forget it." They were off by themselves in a corner of the room. Men were entering now, dressed in pressure suits with the helmets removed and mopping perspiring foreheads. Parts of sentences drifted to their ears. "No more than 3,000 people left. We're out using all the interlocks now. Can't get to him. Tried everything. His wife's on the Aetherix now, pleading with him. Darn it, he's got the lever in his hand. All he has to do is pull it, and if we can only get close enough to blast him down, if we were only sure he wouldn't see us first." And Turner seemed to listen to all of it with a grisly satisfaction, but he remained in the corner. He lit another cigarette and ground it out. He burst out savagely, "Look at that crowd out there. It's fun to them. Entertainment. I don't know what to do. I tell you, I don't." He hitched the black box he carried into a comfortable position and held it close. "What is that?" asked Lucky peremptorily. Turner looked around, stared at the box as though he were seeing it for the first time, and said, "It's my computer, a special portable model I designed myself." For a moment, pride drowned out the worry in his voice. "There's not another one in the galaxy like it. I always carry it around. That's how I know." And he stopped again. Lucky said in a hard voice, "All right, Turner. What do you know? I want you to start talking. Now." The young councilman's hand came lightly to rest upon the engineer's shoulder, and then his grip began to tighten just a bit. Turner looked up, startled, at the other's calm brown eyes held him. "What's your name again?" he said. "I'm David Starr." Turner's eyes brightened. "The man they call Lucky Starr?" "That's right." "All right, then, I'll tell you, but I can't talk loudly. It's dangerous." He began whispering, and Lucky's head bent toward him. Both were completely disregarded by the busily hurrying men who entered and left the room. Turner's low words flooded out now as though he was glad to be rid of them. He said, "The walls of the city dome are double, see? Each wall is made of transite, which is the toughest, strongest silicone plastic known to science, and it's backed by force beams. It can stand immense pressure. It's completely insoluble. It doesn't etch. No form of life will grow on it. It won't change chemically as a result of anything in the Venusian ocean. In between the two parts of the double wall is compressed carbon dioxide. That serves to break the shock wave if the outer wall should give way. And of course the inner wall is strong enough to hold the water by itself. Finally, there's a honeycomb of partitions in between the walls, so that only small portions of the in-between will be flooded in case of any break." "It's an elaborate system," said Lucky. "Too elaborate," said Turner bitterly. "An earthquake, or a Venus-quake, rather, might split the dome in two, but nothing else can touch it, and there are no Venus-quakes in this part of the planet." He stopped to light still another cigarette. His hands were trembling. "What's more, every square foot of the dome is wired to instruments that continually measure the humidity between the walls. The slightest crack anywhere, and the needles of those instruments jump. Even if the crack is microscopic and completely invisible, they jump. Then bells ring and siren sounds. Everyone yells, 'Beware the water!'" He grinned crookedly. "Beware water, that's a laugh. I've been on the job 10 years, and in all that time the instruments registered only 5 times. In every case, repairs took less than an hour. You pin a diving bell on the affected part of the dome, pump out the water, fuse the transite, add another glob of the stuff, let it cool. After that, the dome is stronger than before. Beware water. We've never even had a drop leak through." Lucky said, "I get the picture. Now get to the point." "The point is overconfidence, Mr. Starr. We've partitioned off the dangerous sector, but how strong is the partition? We always counted on the outer walls going gradually, springing a small leak. The water would trickle in. We always knew that we would have plenty of time to get ready for it. No one ever thought that someday a lock might be opened wide. The water will come in like a fat steel bar moving a mile a second. It'll hit the sectional translite barrier like a spaceship at full acceleration. You mean it won't hold? I mean, no one has ever worked out the problem. No one has ever computed the forces involved. Until half an hour ago. Then I did, just to occupy my time while this is going on. I had my computer. I always have it with me. So I made a few assumptions and went to work. And it won't hold. I'm not certain. I don't know how good some of my assumptions are. But I think it won't hold. I think it won't. So what do we do? If that barrier doesn't hold, Aphrodite is done. The whole city. You and I and 250,000 people. Everybody. Those crowds outside that are so excited and thrilled are doomed once that man's hand pulls downward on the switch it holds. Lucky was staring at the man with horror. How long have you known this? The engineer blurted in immediate self-defense. Half an hour! But what can I do? We can't put subsea suits on 250,000 people. I was thinking of talking to Morris and maybe getting some of the important people in town protected, or some of the women and children. I wouldn't know how to pick which ones to say, but maybe something should be done. What do you think? I'm not sure. The engineer went on harrowed. I thought maybe I could put on a suit and get out of here. Get out of the city altogether. There would be proper guards at the exit at a time like this. Lucky backed away from the quivering engineer. His eyes narrowed. Great galaxy, I've been blind! And he turned and dashed out of his room. His mind tingled with a desperate thought. And thus ends this chapter. I hope you all will join me next week for the 6th chapter. And have a good rest of your day. Bye!